there's things that are just kind of hard for us, just to be completely honest. Like, we live in a time period in history. Think about it, like, has anyone here ever made tea? You ever made tea? Yeah? And, like, think about it, like, you're just kind of steeped in this. You know what I mean by steeping? Like, it just kind of gets on you. You know what I mean? And so we are steeped in a culture. We're steeped in a time period. And so a lot of times when it comes to reading the Bible and reading it well, we have a very hard time because the context in which it was steeped is not the context in which we are. Does that make sense? And so we have a hard time getting our brains out of our own time and into theirs. And so when we read this, a lot of times you learned this in Sunday school when you were wee little, right? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah? Anyone? You learned this in Sunday. Honor your father and mother. You were told to do this when you were a little kid, right? This was written not to little children. It was written to adults. The context of this was written to an adult population, which means that grown children are still commanded to show honor to their father and their mother. It's not like when I turn 18, I'm going to do what I want. Like, no, you're still commanded to honor your father and mother. And I would argue this, that our society at large would look far better if adult children behaved as if what they did would impact their father and their mother, right? That the decisions they make would impact the generation. Like, here's my desire, and it should be all of yours, that when people find out when people meet my parents and they find out that I belong to them, that my parents are honored by that, right? That they don't hide the fact that you belong to them. Do you want that? Right? No, you kind of want that your parents to be proud of you. And so this is what we should strive to do, is as adults, honor our parents. And it's a difficult thing to do. But this was written to adults. So if I could just kind of take a minute and set the foundation for us. From a biblical perspective, different relationships, and you'll know this, even if you know zero Bible, you'll be able to affirm that this is true. Different relationships need different foundations and are built in different ways. Does that make sense? Marriage is built different than your relationship with your parents, right? Relationships with your friends are different than relationships with your spouse or your parents or your children, right? Different relationships are built in different ways, and they have different foundations. And once again, the context matters. What kind of relationship it is matters. It frames how we build the rest of the relationship out if we're going to do it biblically. And so all relationships carry different expectations and a lot of other different things too, like boundaries. Like, different relationships have different boundaries, things that are acceptable and things that are not, different permission structures, different practices, different habits. Every relationship isn't built the same. They are all built differently. And so when we are building a foundation of right, godly relationships, it matters that we build it right, because if we don't, it ends up wrecking the relationship. Do you follow that? And so what we have to do is ensure that we're building it right. This is why things like hookup culture, friends with benefits, like those are corrosive to relationships because the relationship wasn't built to carry the weight that brings with it. Does that make sense? And so this is why it's so important that we build our relationships the way that God commands we build our relationships. And so what I want us to do is look first at the parent-child relationship and how it should be built, and then look at the marriage relationship and how it should be built, because those two oftentimes get screwed up. So I want us to talk about that this morning. And like I said, few things are more corrosive than building a relationship incorrectly. And so what I want us to do is build it right. So if you treat your spouse like he is your friend and not your spouse, it will destroy that relationship. If you treat your parents like they are, like you're more connected to them than you are to your spouse, it will destroy those relationships. You need to have them framed correctly and in the right context. But here's the problem in the world we live in. Can I just, let's just pan out, look at it from 30,000 feet, we're not allowed to define anything anymore. Did you hear that? We are not permitted to define something any longer. Everything's fluid, right? You try to build something on water, take a swing at that. No, you need foundations, you need definitions, you need to know that what you're doing is accurate and right and good and true. But we live in a time period where everything is supposed to be fluid and nothing's allowed to have definitions. It's all about feelings and my desires and my hopes and what I want to see and how my definition of truth, right? Since when did you agreeing with something have anything to do with whether it's true or not, right? And so this is why it matters that we build correctly. It's like, listen, you might have great hopes and aspirations and desires, and your heart really leads you to I want to be a pilot, and I want to fly an airplane, and I have a Toyota Corolla, and it'll get me there. And it's not, because it's not built for that. Does that make sense? You've poorly defined the thing, and it will end up poorly if you drive it off a cliff. You're not going to fly. This is the point. We need to frame things the right way, define things the right way, and then stand firm on good foundations. And a lot of times, here's what I find in the fluidity thing, is that everyone actually still has boundaries, and everyone still actually does have things that they agree with and they don't. And yet, since I'm not allowed to speak my boundaries, they get crossed. You know what I'm talking about? No? Yes? Okay. So they get crossed, and then I'm upset, and so is the other person because I never told them, right? And this is the reality. We have to be able to put in firm foundations and stand on right relationships and do it in a way that aligns with the Word of God. Because here's the other truth. Every time you step out and decide, I know better, it turns out bad. So maybe we just start to trust God and let Him set the foundations, and then we build our relationships out in the way that He would have us do it. And so what we need to do when it comes to relationships is assign priorities. And that's hard because priorities over time in relationships will change. Okay? Are you following that? Relationships changed priority over time. And so what I want to start with is everyone here, just understand your parents should always be high on your priority list, right? The relationship of you as child with your parents should always be high on your priority list. And I understand I'm preaching this with my mom in the room, right? To have no relationship with your parents is unhealthy, but also, listen to this, to be too close to them is unhealthy too. This is another reason, actually, honestly, just as a kind of a side thing, this is why divorce is so detrimental to children, because you've taken a foundational relationship and you've kind of blown it up in some ways. And so it takes a lot of work, actually, to really help a child through that, but that's a different conversation. But this relationship really should be, your parent relationship, as you grow, will be in one of three places, okay? Second, third, or fourth place in your priority list. And it should never go below that, and it should never go above that, okay? First, number one relationship is with who? Do you know who? God, with the Lord. Yeah, number one relationship. My relationship with God is number one for me. If you are still living at home, you're still a child, you're on the payroll, you know what I'm talking about? Mom and dad should be number two. When you become married, mom and dad move to 3, okay? When you have children, mom and dad move to 4, okay? And good, loving, godly parents will gladly and joyfully do that with you, right? That this is the way this goes. Now, listen to this. When your children grow up and they move out of the house and they're starting their own family, a lot of times mom and dad start to age and they get to a point where they need a hand, and mom and dad move back up to 3, right? You know what I'm talking about? Like, these things shift and change in priority, but they still need to be built out in a healthy way. I'm sure we all have met the person. In fact, there's a gentleman in the room right now. I won't call his name out, Josh Apel, and he told me about that he had a coworker once that was like, they were trying to finish a job out, and the guy's like, I need to go home because mom's making dinner. And he was like, 50? And Josh was like, if you go home before we're done working so you can have dinner with mom, don't come back tomorrow. It's like, that is an unhealthy relationship, right? You know, and it's that sort of thing that we can see happen a lot of times when things get out of whack priority-wise. That we should be able to see moms and dads change in those relationships as new things happen. The priority shifts depends on where the relationship is at. And we should be able to do that in a kind, loving, godly way. If the relationship is built well, it will joyfully shift through those changes. Does that make sense? And this is what we want to see. So Scripture, though, demands that we do several things as children and several things as parents. I'm just going to breeze through these because it's not the bulk of what I want to talk about. But children are commanded to do a couple things. Obey your parents. Command. Listen, you're like, I don't like that. Tough. You don't have to we tell our kids this all the time, like we put food in front of them. I don't like that. Well, what's fun is you don't have to like it to eat it. Obey your parents. Honor your parents. And here's another command. That's given to you. It's out of the book of Hebrews. Live in such a way that raising you isn't a burden to your parents. Anyone here like, ooh, that hurt my feelings? Don't raise your hand. I don't want to call you out like that. Live in such a way that raising you is not a burden to your mom and dad. And parents are called to do this. They're called to raise their children up. That's discipling them in the faith and the knowledge and the hope of Jesus Christ, teaching them right from wrong, and showing them how they're to live. It's to provide for their needs. If you are not providing for the needs of your children, the Scripture says it is an abomination to God, that you are worse than an unbeliever if you're not providing for the needs of your own household, and to protect them as best as you can. These are the things that you are called to do as parents. And that's the foundation of this relationship. But once again, one day that will change. You will move out of your parents' home. And in fact, good parents build the relationship on purpose so that you will, right? If you want to put it simply, it's maybe an oversimplification, but parents, build your relationship with your kids so they leave, and build your relationship with your spouse so they stay. Right? I do this on purpose. I want healthily for my children to move beyond our home and to one day live on their own. And we do our work to prepare them for that. So I want to look a little closer at this idea of honoring your father and mother and walking in obedience to them. So go to Mark chapter 7. Is where we're going to pick that up. Mark chapter 7. And I want to show this to you in a way that you can see. So pick it up in verse 5. Mark 7, verse 5. And it's a little confusing, and then I'll explain it, and it will be slightly less confusing, I hope. And then we're going to display it for you. And then it hopefully will be even slightly less confusing after that. All right. So 7 verse 5 says this, and the Pharisees and the scribes asked him, meaning Jesus is the him, why do your disciples not walk according to the traditions of the elders? Now that's, if you want to know at the point in which they messed up, that was it. Right? That's where they screwed up. Why isn't he walking according to the rules that we made up out on the spot? Like, I wish Jesus did this. And so, but they eat with defiled hands. And he said to them, that means, like, who here has been taught as a kid, or you taught your kids, wash your hands before you eat? Okay? Why? Germs, right? Because you saw what their hands touched. And it was like everything gross. All right? Mostly the inside of their own nose. Right? I saw some of you look at your children, and now we know. If they offer you like a jelly bean, don't take it. It ain't a jelly bean. And so, all right. That's not what this is talking about. This is a ritualistic wash, not for cleanliness. This is ritualistically so that they would have hands that were prepared to take food in. So it was a whole thing. Anyway, we'll get into that in a minute. And he said to them, well did Isaiah prophesy of you hypocrites, as it's written. So at this point, they know they messed up. And this people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. That had to hurt. And he said, you leave the commandments of God and you hold to the traditions of men. And then he said to them, you have a fine way of rejecting the commandments of God in order to establish your traditions. For Moses said, honor your father and mother, and whoever reviles father or mother must surely die. But you say, if a man tells his father or his mother, whatever you would have gained from me is Corban, and that means that it has been reserved for God, like everything I have has been given to God. That's what that would mean. Then you no longer permit him to do anything for his father or mother, thus making void the word of God by your tradition that you have handed down, and many such things you do. Joe, can I see you for a minute? All right, cool. So I talked to him beforehand. And so anyway, isn't this beautiful? Isn't this beautiful? His mom made it. Here's what the ritualistic washing would look like. You ready for this? I'm going to walk you through it. So I prepared him for it. You held your hands upright, fingers up, okay? Put them over the bowl. And I first wash the right hand. And it was you pour some water over the right hand, okay? And then you go left hand. You pour some water over the left hand. And you stop. And then you do the right hand again. And that would do that. And then you do the left hand again. And that would do that. Okay, and then, keep your fingers up. You let the water drip off, and then you turn them over, and you let the water drip off. And then you take the towel, right hand first, and then left hand. And great job, you're all done. Okay, so we have basins set up downstairs for fellowship time. When we go down, you can wash one another's hands and get each other rolling. But no, like this was, what did that do? Nothing. Right? Literally nothing changed. And this is what they were demanding that Jesus do. Here's what was going on in the background that Jesus laid into them about. The religious leaders would commit everything they had to the Lord, okay? And then, do you know what the retirement plan was in ancient Israel when Jesus was walking around? You know what it was? It wasn't 401k. It was your kids. That was your retirement plan. That's why being barren wasn't like a societal issue. That was a retirement issue. You had nothing saved up because you'd have no hope. This is also why Judas got so angry whenever the alabaster jar of perfume was broken and poured over Jesus. That was her retirement fund. That'd be like 30 grand today that she broke and poured over the head of Christ because he needed anointing. And listen, the reality was they didn't have retirement plans. I won't go too deep into this, but have you heard where Jesus talks about, I am going away to prepare a place for you, and I will bring you back to myself? Here's the custom that he was leaning into, was that the young man, when he would marry, when he would become betrothed to a young lady, he would then go home and he would build onto his father's house a room or a small house or compound somewhere near on his father's property, and he would then bring his wife home with him there once he had the place prepared. The point being that son took care of dad and mom when they aged. Because here, there wasn't like you retired at 65 and you went and sat on the beach. You worked until you physically could not, and then you trusted your children to take over for you from there on out. And what the religious leaders were doing was giving people a pass, saying if you commit everything you own to the Lord, then you don't have to take care of your parents as they get older. And here's Jesus saying, I commanded you, honor your father and mother. You made up a goofy hand wash thing, and you're more upset about that than someone not caring for their parents? Like, are you kidding me? Right? So I'm glad that Jesus treated them the way, like, did you read that and you thought like, ouch, Jesus? Like, I'm feeling like the insult ricocheted off of them and hit me, right? I'm not even involved, right? Do you know what I'm talking about? He was harsh, and he should have been. You're abandoning the ones who raised you so that you can keep it for yourself and claiming it's for God. Like, that's wicked, right? He should have been harder on him, I think. I think he was nice in the way that he dealt with that. So this is what they were doing. They were holding back their stuff, and Jesus calls this out. So when we get into this idea of marriage, like we are still called to leave our parents, but we aren't called to abandon them so much so that they have no one to care for them, right? Because someday we are going to have to still show them honor, even though it's going to change the way it looks. So when you get married, how do you continue to honor your parents? I think that's important to set that foundation as we go along. But the parent-child relationship does cease to be primary, but you still have responsibilities in it. The parent-child relationship is kind of like this. So I found this today. Isaiah found this for me today. This is a giving envelope for our daily bread. Okay, just so you know, it's nothing special. What's special about it is it has this little line. Do you know what this line is called? Perforation. Who knows what perforation is? Good job. It means that it was specifically designed to be torn apart. Okay? And so that you can tear it apart without damaging either side. Does that make sense? So strategically, in a perfect line, it has cuts made that allow the paper to be torn apart without damaging either part of the paper so that you can remove them in a healthy way. And this is what we're talking about when we talk about the parent-child relationship. When we are called to leave father and mother, is this, that over time, as parents parent, that they should be perforating their relationship so that over time, as you guys, as the child grows and they seek independence, they can make a healthy break where the child can go their way and the parent can go their way, and they can continue in a healthy relationship where there isn't parts of you that are still remaining on the other. Does that make sense? And then this is what healthy parenting does, is it helps your child to live in such a way that when they move out on their own, that they're capable of doing that. Does that make sense? Yeah? And this is what we want to do. It's how we try to healthily allow our child to move. And that's hard, isn't it? Like, our oldest kid is 10. We're trying to give him some independence, right? And you're just like, he might do great. He might burn down the house. And you're like, how's our homeowners? Is it up to date? And you're like, trying to figure all that stuff out. But it's difficult when you're trying to do that. But healthy relationships will naturally put in ways for the child to naturally begin to live on their own without the aid of the parent. Because here's the other reality. Someday you will be without parents. Someday you will be the one who is standing as the elder in your family. You will be the one who has to go through life without them. They won't always be there. Who here wishes they could ask their parents something? Right? You're like, man, I forgot how this works. I wish I could go lean on that wisdom, but you can't. Someday you won't be able to. And so what I'm saying is we should build relationships so that when we send our kids out on their own and we are no longer with them, they'll be successful. Does that make sense? But many times those relationships have a hard time because the parents want to cling to the kids or the kids want to cling to the parents. And they don't build in a natural way to separate. So the marriage relationship is the one that's called to cleave. Now, if your brain goes to cleaver, like a big knife, just understand the word cleave actually doesn't mean to cut apart. It means to stick together. The idea would be like two pieces glued to one another, that they should never be separated. It actually carries with it two ideas, one being glued together, the other being that to be in pursuit of one another. Isn't that interesting? That it would be, have you ever heard like in reference to like the law chasing down a fugitive, like he's on him like white on rice, stink on a monkey? Nobody? That's not your thing? Yeah, so like it's that idea of being stuck to or being in pursuit of. It carries both of those ideas, and the marriage relationship carries that idea. And the problem comes when the marriage relationship, like so here I have a board that's been glued together. So it's been glued together right down the center here. And the problem is when the parent relationship switches places and it wants to stick together, and then the marriage relationship is expected to have built-in separation. And when those two get out of line, things can really get rough. So I want to talk through the marriage relationship now, how we can prioritize the relationship with one another as one flesh joined together in the eyes of God. This is why, listen, we have 3 sacraments that we really, here at Grace, that we really look at as sacraments: baptism, communion, and marriage. It is a moment where God meets with you and fuses two people one to another, right? So the problem, though, is when we get those relationships out of whack. So let's go to Genesis chapter 2, Genesis 2, verse 22. And I'll show you what we're talking about, and we'll wrap our time up here. But Genesis 2. Genesis 2. I went to the wrong place. Okay. Genesis 2, verse 22 says this: "And the rib that the Lord had taken from the man, he made into a woman, and he brought her to the man. And then the man said, This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked and not ashamed." Now, this is how connected you are to be to your spouse. This is the way that you're supposed to be ingrained one with another. You are one flesh after marriage. You are joined together, not to be separated. So here's what I want to break down for you in the depth of this relationship. Let's go back to verse 22, right? And it says it this way: And the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman, brought her to the man. And then he said, "This is at last bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of the man." Now, a couple things happen here. Both the man and the woman are created from the same stuff. Did you see that? That makes you equals. One is not greater than the other. You are equals. Equal value, equal purpose, equal worth, equal in every single way that you possibly can be equal. You're equal. Now, to behave like one is better than the other is not a biblical standpoint. You are created from the same stuff. Okay? However, one another's needs, although different than your own, should be of equal importance to each other. We dive into this when we do premarital counseling with young couples. We talk about how, just because I don't understand her needs doesn't make them non-existent, right? They still matter. I still need to attend to them. Of course, men and women are equals, and yet we have to understand they're distinct from one another. They are different. Equal, but distinct. And distinct in such a way that you are custom built one for another. Custom made one to the other. This is why, I'm not going to spend a ton of time here, but it's why same-sex relationships are outside of God's design. He custom built the man, and then he custom built the woman to fit perfectly to the man. Men and women are not interchangeable. They're distinct and different. And God designed it that way. And once again, for us to say, my desires are greater than God's design is foolish. You cannot just swap them out. So, if you want to dig a little bit deeper here, although men and women are made from different stuff, made from the same stuff, and although they are distinct, the idea the word used in the creation of woman says that she was made from man and. Like that there was an addition to, So he made her from the man and then created her custom to fit him perfectly. It was a complement made to go together. Understand this, every part of creation was good except that when man was by himself. God created man and woman, the only thing in creation he made as a set, right? That it only works when it's together, right? So this is the stuff that I want us to see. God built men and women to be together, and you were created that way. He goes on in verse 24. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So, if the parent-child relationship is to be perforated, it's to have, strategically built so that they can go off on their own and live their own lives. If that's how that relationship's made, then the marriage relationship is built, glued together. So this is a board that my dad and I, and by my dad and I mean I stood beside him while we did it. We glued this together last night. So what I need is two men who fancy themselves to be strong. And that's, as soon as I say that, every guy's like, well, I'm strong, but I'm not going to raise my hand and look prideful too. So I need two guys that believe they're strong. And I'm just going to two names out of Jacob and Riley. And so, come on up. They're my nephews. One of them wears a sweater with my face on it, so it's my moment. And so it's built with handles. And here's the reality. Anyone here ever do any woodworking? Like that's just part of you've done some woodworking? Here's what you know is that if this wood breaks, I'm going to ask them to try and pull it apart. If this wood breaks, it's not going to break on the glue joint, right? The glue is stronger than the wood around it. And this is the point we're trying to make. So here, I'm going to hand this to you. Did you flex a little before you came up? No, okay, just checking. All right, so you grab the other handle, and we'll just see if you guys can pull it apart. So go ahead. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Oh, they cannot. Okay, so good job. You looked so cute. Okay, give them a hand. There you go. And this is the reality, is that this thing is built so strong that you should not ever be able to get it to come apart. But here's the other reality, is that it can still be taken apart. Have we not all seen that a marriage relationship that has fallen apart, haven't we? Yeah, say yes. So that's the reality, is that I'm doing this to protect my eyes and not to have an insurance claim. So you can take it apart, but the reality is it didn't break on the glue joint. Yeah. Yeah, this wasn't the weak thing up here. So it didn't break on the glue joint. It left a piece together, didn't it? And anyone who knows anyone, this isn't like I'm not coming after you if you've experienced a divorce. I'm just telling you something you already know, which is this: it hurt. Even if it was the only choice you had, even if it was the spot that you were in, I'm not here to judge. I'm just saying this: you know that a piece of you went with it, right? You got busted up in it. And that's just the reality, is that because God created it so that it wasn't supposed to come apart, and when it does, it hurts. It breaks down in ways that are detrimental to you. The idea here is that you are to separate from mom and dad and cling to your spouse. Now, the way this is written, once again, context trips you up. This is written, husbands, leave mother and father, cleave to your, and it doesn't say anything to wife, right? Did you notice that? That's not because the wife was just so good at it, that the only one who messes up is the husband, right? It's because in the context of the time in which that was written, that the young lady had no pathway home if the husband left her. So she would naturally completely hold to her husband. But the husband, oftentimes, living at home with mom and dad, had a hard time separating away. Does that make sense? And so we are called, both of us, to set the priority of the relationship. It is okay to say, Mom, I can't make it to Christmas dinner this year. My family are doing our own thing. It's okay for you to do that. I've had conversations with parents before that was that way. At the moment, and it went like this: at the moment that you, as her parent, put her hand in her husband's hand, you cease to be responsible for her, and she is ceased to be your daughter. She is now his wife. Right? You're still your daughter. You still love her. I get that. But the responsibility has shifted, and she now goes with him. And she does not have to obey you in every word that you say, because she is now his wife. And that relationship takes priority over yours. Does that make sense? And so as we look at marriage, I wanted to set that up. So what am I asking you to do? Well, here it might be here that you, as mom and dad and as child, have never pulled at the perforation and separated away in a way that's healthy. Maybe you as mom and dad aren't letting your kid grow up, right? Or maybe you as the child are like, the world is scary, staying home, right? Maybe that's where you're at. But you've never pulled the perforation and healthily separated and let your child go and grow up. Or maybe you are here and you are putting more emphasis on your parents than you are on your spouse, and you are called to take care of your spouse. Or maybe you're here and you're preparing yourselves like, this marriage thing isn't what I thought it would be, and I'm getting ready to chop this thing up. And I would encourage you, do not do that. Do your best, as far as it depends upon you, to live inside of that relationship. And I understand, listen, I'm not a fool. I get it. Sometimes that choice isn't yours. I get that. Sometimes you have to make hard decisions, but as far as it depends on you, do what you can to save that relationship, because God has joined it together. Stand firm. Treat your spouse like your own body. Take care of them, look out for them, build them up in love. Lord, we thank you for bringing us together today.